Alright, it's Wednesday, April 24th, and as you can see, we're no longer in Reno, Nevada. Yeah, actually in the Sunset District of San Francisco, and more specifically here on Irving Street. And yeah, don't do what I just did by leaving your backpack in the car. An unfortunate trend here in the city where if you've got something left in your car and people can see it, more than likely you'll get your window smashed. So word to the wise in case you ever visit the city, or if you do live in the city and you yeah, just don't leave your bag in the car. And yeah, got back in the city on Saturday evening, and we're a few days removed now, and while I had a really fantastic time out there sipping on a variety of adult beverages, I didn't get a chance to sip on one of my more favorite beverages, which is why we're here on Irving today. So gonna be grabbing some boba today. It's been a while, and in case anyone knows of any spots in Reno for that particular beverage, I'd be grateful for some comments down below for the next time that I head out there to be able to get some of that. Alright, yeah, so here at Wonder Tea on 24th and Irving, pretty good boba spot. One of the few boba spots with seating in the area, so highly recommend it for that reason, as well as the beverages being pretty good. There's obviously the main Chinatown, and then secondary Chinatown is kind of considered the Clement Street area in the Richmond district, so definitely we'll head out there at some point, but here in Irving, and this is sort of known as the third Chinatown. Alright, so yeah, going to be recapping the hands that I played at Peppermill during Run It Up Reno during a 5-hour cash game session or so. Played 3-5 no limit. Alright, so in this first interesting hand, it's a straddle pot, and it gets to me on the button with ace queen offsuit, and I bump it to $60. Folds over to the cutoff limper, and only she makes the call. So go heads up to a flop of king 9-6, 2 diamonds. She checks it over to me, and I decide to put out a continuation bet of $40, just keep my entire range wide here, and occasionally just take it down with a nice continuation bet here, but she makes the call. The turn is a 5 of hearts, and she checks it over to me. And this card is a better one for her range. She can have a lot of pair plus straight draw type hands here, some flush draws, as well as some 2-pair holdings occasionally. And so given that, I decide to check back. The river brings a 6 of spades, and this is where it gets interesting because she puts out a bet of $200. A rather large bet relative to the size of the overall pot, and a bit of a polarizing bet here. And so when the 6 hits the river, it makes it less likely that she has a hand like pocket 6s. I don't put her on a king because I block some of the strongest kings, having an ace and a queen in my hand. I'm not sure that she'd be betting a hand like king jack for a value. She could occasionally have 7-8, which makes a lot of sense, maybe a hand like 7-8 of diamonds, but that's only one combo there. And because it's such a polarizing bet, I feel like she either has a hand like pocket 9s, which makes the most sense, or busted diamonds. I don't really think she's going to have a 5 here too often. Even a hand like 5-7 would be somewhat out of her range. Maybe ace 5 suited can be in there, but I don't know that she'd be turning that hand into a bluff, and she might just take her showdown value with a pair of 5s here. So I ultimately deduced that she either has pocket 9s here or missed diamonds. And given that there are more combos than diamonds, I decided to make the call. And unfortunately, she turns over the bad news and indeed has pocket 9s. So she takes it down with the full house. I obviously got a little bit stubborn there to make the call, but having the nut high, no pair there, and kind of breaking it down, I think it was an okay call against some other players perhaps, maybe not this particular player, as she was a little bit more tighter than, I guess, the general population. And so good info nonetheless to have that moving forward. In this next hand, there's an early position raised to $20. The middle position player calls, and I'm on the button with ace-jack offsuit. Definitely a good candidate to be putting in a 3-bet here, but given that I was still filling out the table at this point, and the fact that I have position, I decided to just call, and both of the blinds make the call as well. So we go 5 ways to a flop of ace-6-4, 2 diamonds, checks to the initial raiser, he puts out a bet of $60. The middle position player calls, and I decided to call as well on the button, and both of the blinds fold. The turn pairs a 6, and the initial raiser checks this time, as does the middle position player. And at this point, I'm putting the initial raiser not on ace-king or ace-queen here, so he probably is more likely to have a hand like kings or queens. And the middle position might have a flush draw or an ace here, but he shouldn't be ahead of my ace-jack given that he just called pre-flop. So I decided to put out a value bet, try to deny some equity as well, and I bet $150. The early position player tanks for quite a while. He ultimately decides to fold. Middle position tanks for a while, and he decides to call. The river brings the 9 of clubs, and middle position checks it pretty quickly this time. And he is kind of a little bit more of a tighter player, and while I can get some value here against a weaker ace, I just haven't seen him do enough yet in this particular session to ultimately feel completely confident that my ace-jack here is good. I think I can be running up against ace-queen here some percentage of the time. So I take the conservative route and I decide to check back. And he turns over ace-10 of diamond. He had a really big hand, but luckily for me, he did not make the flush, and so I take this one down. Next hand, it folds to the button who puts out a raise to $25. This is the same player from the first hand that was a little bit on the tighter side. I'm in the small blind with pocket 9s, and although she's a bit of a tighter player, I think this is a good candidate to be putting in a 3-bet, so that's what I do. I raise it to $80. And it gets back to her, and she makes the call. The flop comes ace-6-4. Definitely a good spot to be continuation betting here, but to sort of somewhat stay balanced and kind of get some additional info, I decided to check here, which I think is okay, because on occasion I'd be checking hands like ace-king, ace-queen to balance when I have hands like king-king, queen-queen, jack-jack. So I check it over to her and she checks back. The turn is an ace of diamonds, a pretty good card because it makes it less likely that she has an ace in her hand. And I'm feeling pretty good that I have the best hand here. So I decided to put out a value bet of $60, and she doesn't take too long and she makes the call. The river comes a 6 of spades, so it double pairs the board and brings in the front door flush draw. And while it looks like a pretty scary card, it doesn't really scare me too much, just because I don't think she should be having an ace or a 6 here too often given the way the hand is played out. And I also don't put her on a flush draw because I don't think she would have played it that way either. And so I ultimately deduced that she probably has a hand like 7s or 8s, and I go for some thin value targeting those hands, and I put out a bet of $110. She tanks for quite a while, and so I'm feeling pretty good that she has one of those 2 hands, and she finds a call and she turns over pocket jacks. So misread her a little bit there, and while I was wrong in this case and value owned myself, I think it's still an okay bet here once you can kind of deduce and essentially put your opponent on a pretty narrow range of hands, or at least you think you can put them on a narrow range of hands, and you feel like a value bet is worthy. I think it's good to go for it sometimes. And you know, if you're making enough value bets in the long run, you're going to get called and value own yourself from time to time. So not the results I wanted, but still happy, I think, with the play overall. All right, in this next hand, cutoff raises it to $15. I'm on the button with pocket queens, a premium hand here, and I put in a 3-bet to $50. Folds back to the cutoff, and he makes the call. We go heads up to a flop of king 9-5, 2 clubs. He leads out this time for $50, and so with the king being out there and still having too strong of a hand to fold, I just decide to call. The turn brings a 6 of spades, and he doesn't stop betting. He puts out a bet of $100. And I think my hand here is a little bit too strong to fold just yet. And I don't think it's strong enough to raise given that the king is out there, but he can still have some flush draws, some pair plus straight draw type hands, and so I make the call. The river brings a deuce of spades, so a pretty good safe card here. He decides to just check it, and I'm happy to just take my hand to showdown here, and I check it back. and he turns over 7-9 offsuit. So he bet flop and turn with a pair and then a pair plus straight draw, and I faded, and we'll take this one down. All right, this next hand I get moved to a different 3-5 table. There's a cutoff open to $25. I'm on the button with pocket tens, and I decided to just call here. I think you can certainly make the argument for putting in a 3-bet here, but again, just got moved to a new table, and so I wanted to feel out the table a bit, and everyone else fold. We go heads up to a flop of queen 7 deuce 2 hearts. He puts out a continuation bet, a rather large one, around pot size. It was $55. And my hand's a little bit too strong here to just fold right away, so I make the call. The turn brings a 6 of hearts, so the front door flush completes. He checks it rather quickly this time, and I just decide to check back. The river brings a queen of spades, so it pairs the queen, and he checks it pretty quickly this time. And again, now I'm feeling pretty good that my tens are very much the best hand here. You can have nines or worse here quite a bit often. So I decided to put out a value bet of $100. He tanks for a little while, and he ultimately decides on a call. I turn my hand over, and he turns over pocket jacks. So lose again to jacks, second time getting value owned in this session. But again, similar to that first hand where I value owned myself, I think it's a correct spot to be betting here for value on the river when the opponent has shown weakness on both turn and river. So didn't work out again this time. Get value owned twice in this session, but I guess like I said, in the long run, I think this is the correct play to be betting these kinds of hands. All right, last interesting hand to note. There's an early position limp. I'm in the hijack with pocket deuces. I decided to put out a raise of $25. The cutoff player calls and the limper call. We go 3 ways to a flop of king, king, 10 rainbow here. Checks to me, and I want to keep my range advantage here, so I decided to put out a continuation bet of $40, just hoping everyone folds. But unfortunately for me, cutoff makes the call, and the early position player folds. The turn brings a 3 of spades, and after the cutoff calling the flop, I'm not sure that making a bet on the turn is the best play here, so I decide to check. And he checks back, so that's telling me that he probably doesn't have a king, and he's either weighted towards a hand like ace 10, queen 10 for a pair of tens, or a hand like queen jack, jack 9, ace jack. So given that he should be relatively evenly distributed between value hands and drawing hands, I'm planning to just check the river because, you know, I'm beating those queen jack, ace jack type hands, and I'm losing to tens. So just happy to be planning to check it down on the river. Lucky for me though, the river comes a deuce of clubs. So fill up here, get a very disguised full house, and hoping that he has a 10 at this point so that I can get some value. I put out a bet of $125. He doesn't think too long, and he makes the call. So turn my hand over, and he politely knocks on the table indicating that it was good. So that wraps things up for the cash game session at Run It Up Reno. I was in the game for $1,000. I didn't have to add on, and I cashed out for $1,605. So despite the 2 value owning spots, I booked a win of $605. Happy with that. Get a little bit of money back after the 2 busted bullets from the bounty event. And yeah, as far as Run It Up Reno goes, it was an amazing experience. I certainly recommend it if you've never been. And they actually just announced the dates for October. I think it's 11th through the 21st. So definitely we'll probably be back there at that point. All right, it's Friday. I forgot to mention a few things from the other day. The first of which is the immediate plans going forward. There's going to be the Lucky Chances Battle of the Bay series that's happening over the next week and a half. There's a variety of tournaments happening, and I'm going to be hopping into 2 tournaments for sure. There's going to be a $600 buy-in tournament, $50K first place guarantee, and then there's an $1,100 tournament, $100K guarantee. I haven't mentioned too much about this on the vlog yet, but I've actually got 2 older brothers. One lives in Alameda and the other lives in Hong Kong. So the other cool bit of news to share is that from May 10th to the 25th, I'm going to be going to Hong Kong. I'm going to be visiting my brother out there, his wife, and the nephew. Going to spend some time playing some basketball, walking through the streets of Hong Kong, and of course, going to Macau. So that'll be my first time heading over there. If any of you have ever been to Macau or are locals, I'd be grateful for some comments below for recommendations. So yeah, it should be fun for sure. We'll definitely share some sights of Hong Kong as well as Macau. So looking forward to that. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that I've done a variety of different SF Bay Area locations on this vlog. Mostly places that I either want to check out or places that I go to regularly. And so in an effort to make this more interactive to a certain degree, please drop some comments below. I'll pin it to the top. So yeah, I know most of you are probably here for the poker, but trying to make it a little bit more worthwhile and bring some additional value for you to pick some spots to check out. So it doesn't necessarily have to be poker related spots. It could be a restaurant, a bar, a landmark. Happy to try to incorporate that. And so with all that said, that caps things off for this vlog, and I will see you all on the next one.